They said family comes first. But when my own sister destroyed my engagement to steal my billionaire fiancé, I discovered something that would make her regret ever crossing me. Hello, friends. Please join me as I share the story of how my scheming sister's greed led to the most shocking revelation of her life. One that would leave her begging for my forgiveness. Before we dive in, please hit that subscribe button, like this video, and share it with your loved ones. I'd love to know where you're watching from in the comments. Your support means everything to me. Now, to my story. My name is Isabella Chen, and I'm 28 years old. If you had seen me 3 years ago, you would have witnessed a woman living what most people would call a fairy tale. I was engaged to Marcus Blackwood. Yes, the Marcus Blackwood, heir to the Blackwood Industries empire worth $2.8 billion. We met at a charity gala in Manhattan. I wasn't there hunting for rich men, like some people assume. I was there representing the nonprofit I worked for, advocating for literacy programs in underserved communities. Marcus approached me during my presentation, genuinely interested in our mission. Unlike the other wealthy attendees who wrote checks to ease their conscience, Marcus asked real questions. How could we scale the program? What were the biggest obstacles? That night, over champagne and city lights streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, I realized he saw me. Not my bank account, not my family name, not what I could do for his image. Just me. Isabella, the girl who grew up in a cramped apartment above her parents' restaurant, who worked 3 jobs to put herself through college, who believed education could change everything. For 18 months, we built something beautiful. Marcus would surprise me with handwritten notes tucked into my work bag. Not expensive gifts, though those came too, but little observations about things I'd said or dreams I'd shared. He remembered that I loved the smell of old books, so he'd take me to dusty bookshops in Greenwich Village. He knew I missed my grandmother's jasmine tea, so he had it imported from Taiwan and served it to me in her exact teacup pattern. When he proposed on the rooftop of the building where we first met, with the entire city sprawling beneath us like scattered diamonds, I felt like the luckiest woman alive. The ring was breathtaking, a vintage emerald surrounded by diamonds that caught the light like captured stars. But more than that, his proposal speech made me cry. He talked about building a future together, about the family we'd create, about growing old and still finding new things to discover about each other. I should have known it was too perfect to last. My sister Victoria has always been beautiful in that effortless way that makes people stop mid-sentence when she walks into a room. Tall, blonde, with the kind of bone structure that photographers dream about. But more than beautiful, she was magnetic. She had this ability to make anyone, man or woman, feel like the most fascinating person in the world while she was talking to them. Growing up, I was the responsible one. Victoria was the charming one. I studied. She partied. I worked. She dated. Our parents, immigrants who had sacrificed everything to give us opportunities, always excused her behavior. Victoria just needs to find herself, they'd say. She's young. Let her enjoy life. I didn't resent it then. I thought we were just different. I thought she genuinely loved me. The first red flag should have been how interested she suddenly became in my relationship once the engagement made headlines. Billionaire heir proposes to nonprofit worker. The society pages ate it up. Suddenly, my phone was buzzing with interview requests, photographers were camping outside my apartment, and Victoria was calling me every day. "Bella, you're so lucky," she'd gush during our coffee dates. "Tell me everything about Marcus. What's he really like? What does he love? What makes him laugh?" At the time, I thought she was just being sisterly. Looking back, I realized she was taking notes. The second red flag was when she started showing up to events where she knew Marcus would be. Charity dinners, gallery openings, business conferences. Always dressed impeccably, always with some reasonable excuse. "I'm thinking of getting involved in philanthropy," she'd say. Or, "I'm considering a career in art curation." Marcus was polite to her, of course. He was polite to everyone. But I noticed things. How she'd position herself in his line of sight during conversations. How she'd laugh just a little too loudly at his jokes. How she'd find reasons to touch his arm when making a point. Your sister's intense, Marcus mentioned one evening as we walked through Central Park. I laughed it off. She's just excited about the wedding. She's never seen me this happy. God, I was so naive. The third red flag, the one I should have paid attention to, was when Victoria started asking about our relationship problems. Every couple has them, and Marcus and I were no exception. His family had certain expectations about the kind of wife he'd choose. Someone from their social circle, someone who understood their world. My work schedule was demanding, and sometimes I'd have to cancel romantic dinners for emergency grant applications or crisis management with our programs. I made the mistake of confiding in Victoria during one of our sister bonding sessions. We were getting pedicures at her favorite salon, and she seemed so genuinely concerned. It must be hard, she said, her voice soft with sympathy. All that pressure from his family, and you're working so hard to prove yourself worthy of their world. Sometimes I wonder if I'm enough, I admitted. If I can really fit into his life long term. Victoria squeezed my hand. Bella, you're amazing. If Marcus can't see that, maybe he's not the right one for you. I thought she was being supportive. I didn't realize she was planting seeds of doubt while simultaneously gathering intelligence about our vulnerabilities. The engagement party was supposed to be intimate, just close family and friends at Marcus's penthouse. Victoria arrived looking stunning in a midnight blue dress that hugged every curve. But it wasn't just her appearance that caught attention that night. It was her performance. She worked that room like a seasoned politician, charming Marcus's business associates, making his traditional mother laugh with stories from our childhood, positioning herself as the perfect future sister-in-law. And with Marcus, God, I watched her deploy every weapon in her arsenal. She'd approach him when I was across the room talking to other guests, always with some innocent reason. Marcus, Bella told me about your literacy program expansion. I'd love to hear your thoughts on international development. Then she'd listen with rapt attention, her blue eyes wide with admiration, nodding at all the right moments. When the photographer was taking engagement photos, Victoria somehow managed to be in several shots, standing just close enough to Marcus to seem like part of the happy family, but not close enough to seem inappropriate. Her hand would rest on his shoulder for just a moment too long. Her smile would be just a little too bright when she looked at him. I told myself I was being paranoid. Victoria was my sister. She was happy for me. She was just being friendly. The real destruction started slowly, like water finding cracks in a foundation. Victoria began scheduling regular coffee dates with Marcus, ostensibly to plan surprise elements for our wedding. I want to help make this the most perfect day for my sister, she'd tell me with tears in her eyes. You deserve everything beautiful. During these planning sessions, I later learned Victoria was systematically dismantling my relationship from the inside. She'd express concern about whether I was truly happy. Bella seems so stressed lately. I worry she's forcing herself to fit into a world that doesn't appreciate her authenticity. She'd share carefully edited versions of our conversations, making it sound like I was having serious doubts about our future. Meanwhile, she was showcasing herself as the alternative. Where I was complicated, she was easygoing. Where I was career-focused, she was relationship-focused. Where I challenged his ideas, she supported them unconditionally. She became everything she thought he wanted, and everything she convinced him I wasn't. The most insidious part was how she made it seem like she was protecting both of us. I just want you both to be happy, she'd say. If there are problems, isn't it better to address them now rather than after the wedding? I started noticing changes in Marcus. He became distant, distracted. Our conversations felt forced. When I'd try to discuss wedding plans, he'd seem uncomfortable. When I'd suggest romantic evenings together, he'd claim he was too busy with work. Is everything okay? I asked him one evening as we sat in his living room, the silence stretching between us like a chasm. He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something in his eyes that made my stomach drop. Doubt. Isabella, he said slowly, do you really want this? This life, this world, this future? Or are you just going through the motions because it's what's expected? I stared at him, confused. Marcus, of course I want this. I want you. I want us. Where is this coming from? But he wouldn't tell me. He just shook his head and said we needed to think about things. 2 weeks later, I found out where it was coming from. I had stopped by Victoria's apartment to drop off a bridesmaid dress for final alterations. I used my key. We'd always had keys to each other's places since we were teenagers. The apartment was dark, and I assumed she wasn't home, but I could hear voices from her bedroom. Isabella doesn't really understand your world. Victoria's voice floated down the hallway. She's trying so hard to be someone she's not. It's painful to watch. My heart stopped. I crept closer to the partially open door. She told me herself that she sometimes wonders if she's enough for you, Victoria continued. That she feels like she's constantly performing, trying to prove herself worthy of your family's approval. She said that, Marcus's voice heavy with hurt. I probably shouldn't have told you, but I'm worried about her. About both of you. You deserve someone who loves you for who you are, not for what you can provide. Someone who fits naturally into your life instead of forcing it. I pressed my back against the hallway wall, my world tilting on its axis. Someone like you? Marcus asked quietly. The silence that followed lasted forever and no time at all. I've tried not to feel this way, Victoria whispered. You're my sister's fiancé. But Marcus, what we have, this connection. I've never felt anything like it. And I can see in your eyes that you feel it too. I didn't wait to hear his response. I stumbled out of the apartment, down 4 flights of stairs, and into the busy street where I stood gulping air like I'd been underwater. 3 days later, Marcus called off our engagement. He was gentle about it, respectful even. He talked about wanting different things, about realizing we weren't compatible long-term, about it being better to end things now rather than after marriage. He never mentioned Victoria directly, but I could see her influence in every carefully chosen word. The ring that had once symbolized our future sat on his coffee table between us like an accusation. I'm sorry, Isabella, he said, and I believed he meant it. You're an incredible woman. You deserve someone who's absolutely certain about you. I nodded, too numb to cry. And you found someone who makes you certain? His silence was answer enough. The breakup made headlines, of course. Billionaire heir calls off engagement. The media speculation was ruthless. Some outlets suggested I'd been caught cheating. Others implied I'd been a gold digger all along who'd shown my true colors. The truth, that I'd been systematically destroyed by my own sister, never made it to print. Victoria waited exactly 2 weeks before going public with Marcus. 2 weeks. She called it an unexpected love that we tried to fight but couldn't deny. She played the role of the conflicted sister beautifully, telling reporters how guilty she felt, how she'd tried to step aside for my happiness, how love had simply been stronger than obligation. The society pages ate it up. The tragic romance, the family drama, the beautiful couple who'd found each other despite impossible circumstances. Victoria became the sympathetic figure, the woman who'd fallen in love against her will. I became the unfortunate casualty, the sister who'd lost her fiancé to true love. My parents, desperate to avoid family drama, urged me to be understanding. Victoria was in love. These things happen. Couldn't I be happy for my sister's happiness? I moved across the country to Los Angeles, taking a position with a nonprofit focused on providing legal aid to immigrants. I needed distance, space to rebuild myself away from the wreckage of my old life. The first 6 months were brutal. I'd wake up each morning feeling like I was drowning. The betrayal cut deeper than losing Marcus, though that pain was real too. It was the systematic nature of Victoria's deception, the way she'd used my trust against me, the realization that someone I'd loved my entire life had been capable of such calculated cruelty. But slowly, like a plant growing toward light, I began to heal. My work in LA was meaningful, challenging. I was helping families stay together, fighting deportation cases, providing legal resources to people who reminded me why I'd chosen nonprofit work in the first place. I remembered who I was beyond Marcus Blackwood's fiancé or Victoria's sister. I started taking evening classes at UCLA, working toward a law degree. I joined a hiking group, spent weekends exploring the mountains and beaches of Southern California. I learned to cook authentic Mexican food from my neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, who adopted me like a grandmother. I dated, nothing serious, just reminding myself that I was worthy of love and companionship. A year and a half after the engagement ended, Victoria and Marcus had their dream wedding in the Hamptons. The photos were everywhere, Victoria radiant in a custom Vera Wang gown, Marcus handsome in his tuxedo, the reception a fairy tale of flowers and chandeliers and society's elite. They looked perfect together, like they'd stepped out of a magazine spread about beautiful people living beautiful lives. I felt nothing. No jealousy, no regret, no lingering heartbreak. Just a distant kind of curiosity about two people who used to be important to me. That's when I knew I'd truly healed. 2 years later, I met David Park at a legal aid conference in San Diego. He was presenting on immigration policy reform, brilliant, passionate, the kind of lawyer who'd turned down lucrative corporate offers to work for the ACLU. After his presentation, I approached him with a question about asylum law, and we ended up talking until the conference center closed around us. David was different from Marcus in every way that mattered. Where Marcus had been charming and polished, David was authentic and slightly rumpled. Where Marcus had money, David had purpose. Where Marcus had swept me into his world, David met me in mine. Our relationship developed slowly, built on shared values and genuine friendship before it became romantic. David had no interest in society pages or charity galas. His idea of a perfect evening was cooking dinner together while debating legal precedents, then falling asleep on the couch while watching documentaries. He proposed on a beach in Malibu at sunset, with no photographers, no crowds, just us and the sound of waves. The ring was a simple solitaire that caught the last light of day, and his proposal speech made me laugh and cry in equal measure. He talked about being partners in every sense of the word, about changing the world together, about building a love that would last because it was based on who we really were, not who we pretended to be. 6 months later, we had a small wedding in my parents' backyard in San Francisco. My mother's jasmine plants were in full bloom, the scent filling the warm afternoon air. David's family embraced me immediately. His parents, both professors, his sister who worked for Doctors Without Borders, his grandmother who spoke no English but communicated perfect love through her cooking and warm hugs. Victoria and Marcus weren't invited. Not out of spite, but because they belonged to a different chapter of my life, one I'd closed with gratitude but no desire to revisit. After the ceremony, as David and I swayed to our first dance song, At Last by Etta James, I felt truly, completely happy. Not the desperate, clinging happiness I'd felt with Marcus, always worried it might disappear, but deep, steady contentment. I was loved for exactly who I was, by someone who saw my authentic self as enough. We honeymooned in Thailand, spending 2 weeks at a beach resort where David had volunteered during law school. He introduced me to families he'd worked with, showed me the village school he'd helped build. We snorkeled in crystal-clear waters, ate from street vendors, fell asleep in hammocks under star-filled skies. It was on that trip that David told me something that would change everything. We were walking along the beach at sunset, my hand in his, talking about our future plans. I was telling him about an idea I had for a new immigrant advocacy program when he stopped walking. "Isabella," he said, his voice strange, "there's something I need to tell you about my family's business." I looked at him, confused. "What about it? Your parents are professors." He smiled, but it was complicated. "Yes, they are. But before that, my grandmother started a small import business in Korea. My father helped her expand it when they immigrated to America. Over the years, it grew. A lot." "Okay," I said slowly. "What are you trying to tell me?" David took a breath. "My family's company, Park Industries, it's one of the largest tech conglomerates in Asia. We manufacture components for everything from smartphones to electric cars. Last year, we acquired several American companies, including," he paused, "including Blackwood Industries. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? Isabella, my family now owns the company that Marcus was supposed to inherit. When we acquired Blackwood Industries 6 months ago, Marcus became an employee. A well-paid employee, but still just an employee. I stared at him, my mind reeling. Your family, you bought Marcus's company? It was a business decision made years before I met you. The acquisition had been in planning stages for over 2 years. Marcus's father had been making poor investments. The company was struggling financially. We offered a buyout that saved Blackwood Industries from bankruptcy. Does Marcus know about us? David nodded. He found out last week. I had my assistant send our wedding announcement to all company executives as a courtesy. Marcus called me directly. What did he say? He asked if you knew who I was when we met. When I told him you had no idea about my family's wealth or the Blackwood acquisition, he went very quiet. Then he said, "She really did marry for love, didn't she?" I felt dizzy. Victoria, does she know? That's the interesting part, David said gently. Apparently, Victoria has been pressuring Marcus to start his own business, to prove he doesn't need his family's money. She's been spending quite lavishly, assuming they had unlimited resources. When Marcus explained their new financial reality, that he's now on a salary, that the family fortune is no longer accessible to him, she didn't take it well. What do you mean? David pulled out his phone and showed me a text message from an unknown number. It was from Victoria. Isabella, it read. I just found out about your husband's family. We need to talk. Please call me. I made a terrible mistake. I read it twice before the full implications hit me. She thinks I knew about your money when I married you. She thinks I played some kind of long game. That's exactly what she thinks. And more than that, she's realizing that in pursuing Marcus for his wealth, she ended up with significantly less money than if she'd just stayed out of your relationship entirely. The irony was so complete, so perfectly poetic, that I started laughing. Not bitter laughter, but genuine amusement at the cosmic justice of it all. So she destroyed my engagement to steal a billionaire, I said, and ended up with a middle manager. While I married for love and accidentally became wealthier than Marcus ever was. That's about the size of it, David confirmed. Though for what it's worth, you didn't accidentally become anything. You became the person you were always meant to be. The money is just a side effect. That evening, as we sat on our hotel balcony overlooking the ocean, Victoria called. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to her message with David's hand warm in mine. Bella, please, I know you're angry with me, but I need to talk to you. I made such a huge mistake. I thought I was doing what was best for everyone, but I see now how wrong I was. Marcus isn't who I thought he was, and this life, it's not what I expected. I miss you. I miss my sister. Please, can we talk? I need your help. I deleted the message without responding. 3 more calls came over the next week. Victoria's messages became increasingly desperate. She'd left Marcus, or he'd left her, the story kept changing. She was living in a small apartment in Queens, working as a receptionist at a dental office. She was sorry, so sorry, she'd do anything to make it right. Could I help her find a job in LA? Could I loan her money? Could I just please forgive her? On our last day in Thailand, David and I were having breakfast on the beach when my phone rang again. This time it was Marcus. I answered, curious despite myself. Isabella, his voice was strained. I know I have no right to call you, but I wanted you to know. I know about your husband's family. About the acquisition. Congratulations, I said simply. I hear you're settling into your new role well. A pause. You didn't know, did you? When you married him, you didn't know about the money. No, Marcus. I didn't know. Just like when I was with you, I fell in love with the person, not their bank account. I've been such a fool, he said quietly. Victoria, she's not who I thought she was. When she found out about the financial changes, God, Isabella, I don't know how I was so blind. Sometimes we see what we want to see, I replied, or what other people want us to see. I destroyed the best thing in my life for someone who only wanted me for my money. And you You found someone who loves you for who you are, and he happens to be wealthier than I ever was. The universe has a sense of humor. The universe has a sense of justice, I corrected gently. Marcus, I hope you find happiness. Real happiness, with someone who loves you for you. And I hope someday you can forgive me. Both of us. I already have, I said, and realized it was true. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And it doesn't mean having a relationship. I've moved on, Marcus. You should too. After I hung up, David looked at me with admiration. You handled that beautifully. 3 years ago, that call would have destroyed me, I admitted. Now it just feels like closure. We flew back to Los Angeles the next day, returning to our real life. David went back to his immigration cases. I returned to my law classes and nonprofit work. We settled into the rhythm of married life, grocery shopping and bill paying, and whose turn it was to take out the trash. But the media had discovered our story. Nonprofit worker who lost billionaire fiancé to Sister Mary's even richer man. The headlines wrote themselves. Reporters camped outside our apartment. Photographers followed us to work. The narrative they crafted was delicious. The gold-digging sister who'd stolen a billionaire only to discover he wasn't as rich as she thought, while the innocent sister had stumbled into even greater wealth. It was perfect clickbait, complete with old photos of Victoria and Marcus looking glamorous, contrasted with recent paparazzi shots of Victoria looking haggard outside her queen's apartment. I felt sorry for her, honestly. Not enough to reach out, but enough to hope she'd learned something from the experience. 6 months later, I graduated law school summa cum laude. David threw me a party at our house. Nothing fancy, just friends and colleagues and family, eating my mother's spring rolls and Mrs. Rodriguez's tamales in our backyard. During his toast, David said something that made me cry happy tears. Isabella didn't just marry me. She made me a better man, a better lawyer, a better person. She reminds me every day that success isn't about what you have. It's about what you give. And she gives endlessly, her time, her energy, her brilliant mind, her enormous heart. I'm not lucky to be rich. I'm lucky to be loved by her. As applause filled our backyard, I thought about the woman I'd been 3 years ago. Desperate to prove myself worthy of someone else's love. Willing to diminish myself to fit into someone else's world. That woman was gone. In her place was someone who knew her own worth, who'd built a life based on her values, who'd chosen love over security and found both in abundance. Victoria sent a card. Just a simple congratulations note with her signature. No message, no request for contact. I hoped it meant she was finally learning to stand on her own. The epilogue to this story came a year later, when David and I announced we were expecting our first child. The pregnancy was easy, joyful. We spent evenings painting the nursery and reading parenting books and arguing about names. During my baby shower, thrown by David's sister in their family's Malibu beach house, one of the guests mentioned seeing Victoria on Instagram. She was living in Portland now, working for a sustainable fashion startup, dating a yoga instructor named Kevin who seemed to make her genuinely happy. The photos showed a different Victoria. Natural makeup, casual clothes, real smiles instead of calculated poses. She looks peaceful, the guest observed. I hoped that was true. I hoped she'd finally learn that chasing someone else's life leads nowhere. That happiness comes from building something authentic, not from taking what belongs to others. Our daughter was born on a sunny Tuesday morning in March. Elena Rose Park, named for David's grandmother and my mother's middle name. She had David's dark hair and my stubborn chin, and when she looked at us with those brand new eyes, I felt a love so fierce and pure it took my breath away. As I held her in the hospital room, David beside me looking wonderstruck, I thought about all the paths that had led us here. The betrayal that felt like the end of the world had actually been the beginning of my real life. Victoria's scheming had freed me to find something infinitely better than what I'd lost. The nurse asked if we wanted to limit visitors. Just family, David said automatically. And that's when I realized the deepest truth of all. Family isn't about blood relations or shared DNA. It's about people who choose to love you, who show up for your joy and your sorrow, who see your authentic self and celebrate it. Victoria had taught me that lesson the hard way. But like all the best lessons, it was worth learning. As I settled Elena against my chest, feeling her tiny heartbeat against mine, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Victoria, probably wanting to congratulate us or meet her niece or rebuild our relationship. I deleted it without reading it. Some chapters need to stay closed for new ones to begin. Elena Rose Park would grow up knowing she was chosen, celebrated, treasured. She'd learn that love isn't something you compete for or steal or manipulate. It's something you give freely and receive in abundance when you're brave enough to be yourself. And if she ever doubts her worth, if someone ever tries to diminish her light, she'll have parents who know exactly how to help her shine brighter. The greatest revenge, I learned, isn't proving someone wrong. It's proving yourself right. It's building a life so beautiful, so authentic, so full of genuine love and purpose that their betrayal becomes irrelevant. Victoria stole my fiancé, but gave me something far more valuable. The chance to discover who I really was and what I actually deserved. For that, despite everything, I was almost grateful. My lesson to you? Never let anyone else's actions define your worth. When someone shows you they're not worthy of your love, believe them the first time. And trust that the universe has a way of giving everyone exactly what they deserve, even when it takes a while to arrive. So tell me, what would you have done in my situation? Would you have confronted Victoria immediately, or would you have quietly rebuilt your life like I did? And have you ever experienced a betrayal that led you to something better? Share your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if it resonated with you. Sometimes the best way to heal from betrayal is to know you're not alone in the experience. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, your worth isn't determined by who chooses you, but by how you choose to value yourself.